First story. My husband ditched dinner plans to meet a sales rep at a trendy restaurant, but when I called the place, they had no record of him. Now I'm questioning everything about our marriage. Last week, my world tilted in a way I never expected. My husband, Ethan, and I have been married for 6 years. He works in a high-pressure industry where sales reps constantly compete for his attention by hosting lavish dinners. These aren't your run-of-the-mill meals. They're at upscale restaurants with the intent of pitching their products in exchange for a fancy steak or an indulgent meal. This year alone, Ethan has attended over 40 of these dinners. On the surface, it might not seem like a big deal. But here's the catch. We have a 3-year-old daughter and a 5-month-old son. My life revolves around diaper changes, nap schedules, and trying to keep some semblance of order in our chaotic household. Meanwhile, Ethan is out several nights a week, enjoying meals that I can only dream of while I scrape together dinner and deal with 2 overtired kids. I've asked him, begged him to cut back on these outings. I understand the potential financial opportunities he's chasing. In the past, his connections from these events led to brand-sponsored speaking engagements that gave us a nice financial boost. But this constant routine of lavish dinners, it feels excessive, especially when it's clear that most people in his field don't attend nearly as many. Every time I bring it up, though, Ethan turns it into an argument. He accuses me of not understanding our financial needs, or, worse, trying to sabotage his career. I don't know how to explain to him that it's not about the money. It's about the lack of balance. He's off enjoying fine dining while I haven't had a single evening to myself in weeks. In the past year, we've gone out together without the kids exactly 4 times. But the real breaking point came last Monday. Ethan forwarded me a screenshot of a text from a sales rep, saying she was in town for 2 nights and wanted to have dinner with just him. That's not the norm. These dinners are usually group events, with colleagues or other professionals. The one other time Ethan met a sales rep one-on-one, it was with an older man. This time, it was a woman about our age, someone I couldn't help but find intimidatingly attractive after I looked her up online. They arranged to meet at 6:30 p.m. at a trendy tapas restaurant downtown, conveniently close to her hotel. Ethan brushed off my concerns, but I couldn't help raising an eyebrow at the setup. He got defensive, accusing me of reading too much into it. When Monday evening rolled around, Ethan left the house promptly at 6:04. By 9, I was at my wit's end. The baby had been crying non-stop, and the noise had woken up our toddler, who was now cranky and inconsolable. Exhausted and desperate for relief, I texted Ethan to ask when he'd be home. Nothing urgent, just a simple, "Hey, any idea what time you'll be back?" No response. By 9:15, I was frustrated and called him. Straight to voicemail. I tried again at 9:30, same result. At this point, I was furious. I texted him saying I'd call the restaurant if he didn't respond. And so I did. When I reached the host, my stomach dropped. He assured me no one matching Ethan's description had been there that evening. I felt my pulse quicken. Was I overthinking this? Was it a misunderstanding? I texted Ethan again, telling him I was about to call his parents. Still no response. By 10, I was done. I texted him, saying not to bother coming home. 15 minutes later, Ethan sent me an automated text from his GPS app, saying he'd be home by 10:20. Convenient timing, right? But I wasn't having it. I told him to go to his parents' house instead. He showed up at our doorstep anyway. Without keys, he banged on the door, demanding to be let in. I refused. He accused me of acting crazy and blew off my concerns as hormonal overreactions. He claimed the tapas place was more of a sports bar, so they went to a different restaurant nearby. His excuses didn't add up. Why didn't he text me? Why didn't he answer his phone? And how could he have declined my calls unless he actively sent me to voicemail? What hurt most was his response to my feelings. He told me I was creating imaginary scenarios, said my self-esteem wasn't his responsibility, and even had the audacity to suggest my behavior might be hormonal or tied to PMDD. I didn't let him in that night. He went to his parents' house and stayed there. The next day he came to pick up some things before heading to yet another dinner. Now I'm left with this gnawing feeling in my gut. His actions feel disrespectful, and his dismissive attitude only deepens the wound. But am I overreacting? Or is this as shady as it feels? I'm exhausted, emotionally and physically. I don't know what to do, and I can't tell if my frustration is clouding my judgment. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Second story. AITA for keeping my grandmother's controversial inheritance? The battle between family legacy and my girlfriend's ethics. When my grandmother passed away recently, it felt like the closing of a monumental chapter in my family's history. She wasn't just any grandmother. She was bold, independent, and lived life unapologetically. At over 90 years old, she had seen the world, amassed a lifetime of stories, and collected countless unique items along the way. When she left her estate to me, I was deeply moved but also overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of what she left behind. Among her possessions were items that could be described as anything but ordinary. There were ivory carvings, taxidermy mounts of rare and exotic animals, vintage mink coats, fox furs, a snakeskin bag, and even a seal fur jacket. The most striking and controversial pieces were the mounted animal heads that had been passed down through my grandfather's side of the family. Some of these relics dated back over 100 years. Everything was legal and meticulously documented, but in today's world, these items were undeniably polarizing. To me, they were more than just objects. They represented a complex family legacy, with some pieces having been in my family for 5 generations. My grandmother had always been proud of them, seeing them as a testament to her adventurous life and the history of our lineage. But my girlfriend Emma has a very different perspective. Emma is a passionate vegetarian and a staunch advocate against animal cruelty. While I admire her principles and often align with them, this situation has placed us on opposite sides of a deeply personal debate. For me, these items are a part of my family's story, a history that can't be undone. I don't condone the actions that led to their creation, far from it, but I believe that what's done is done. For example, my great-great-grandfather hunted a lion in 1912. And while that's not something I'd ever celebrate, no amount of guilt or moral outrage will bring that lion back. If anything, I think it's more ethical to use these items rather than let them go to waste or buy modern alternatives made from environmentally damaging materials like plastic. Emma, however, feels strongly that owning, wearing, or displaying these items is inherently wrong, no matter how old they are or what they represent. She believes they should be sold or even destroyed, arguing that the only ethical places for such items are museums or specific cultural practices. Her stance is rooted in her unwavering commitment to animal rights, and she sees my perspective as outdated and insensitive. Our differing views have led to some heated arguments. To compromise, I've already taken down the mounted animal heads from the walls and moved most of the taxidermy into storage. However, I've made it clear that I'm not ready to part with these items just yet. It's been only 3 weeks since my grandmother passed, and I need more time to grieve and decide what to do with her belongings. The idea of selling or destroying them feels too final right now. The financial aspect only complicates matters further. Emma and I did some research, and the potential value of these items is staggering. The low estimate for the animal products alone is between $5,000 and $20,000, while the high end could reach $50,000 to $200,000 or more. Selling them could significantly help us financially, especially in the midst of rising living costs. Some of my friends have suggested that Emma might be more motivated by the money than the ethics, though I don't think that's entirely fair. Her convictions seem genuine, but it's hard not to wonder if the financial benefit is playing a role in her insistence. I feel like I'm walking a tightrope between honoring my grandmother's legacy and maintaining my relationship with Emma. Our arguments have become more frequent and more intense. She accuses me of clinging to the past and ignoring modern ethics, while I feel like she's disregarding the sentimental value of these items. I've tried to explain that this isn't about being insensitive. It's about needing time to process my loss and make decisions that feel right for me. The tension is starting to take a toll on us, and I'm scared of where it might lead. I love Emma, but I also feel strongly about preserving the connection to my family's history, even if it's imperfect. At the same time, I don't want to lose Emma over this. Am I wrong for holding on to these items, even temporarily? Should I prioritize my relationship over my family's legacy? Or is it unfair to expect me to make such a drastic decision so soon after my grandmother's passing? I can't shake the feeling that no matter what I do, I'm going to lose something important. Third story. Foster parents overstep boundaries and apply restrictions to my new phone, even though it was a gift from my biological dad. Let me tell you about this situation that's been eating at me for a few days now. It all started earlier this week when I got a new phone. You might think it's just a phone, but trust me, this is way more complicated than that. I'm 15, and I've been in foster care since I was 6 years old. I've been living with my current foster parents, Lucas and Carla, since I was 9. I get it. Being in foster care is complicated, and I've had my fair share of ups and downs. But one thing I've always tried to do is make the best of the situation. I've been doing okay, at least until now. So here's the thing. My biological dad decided to send me an iPhone 16 Pro Max as an early Christmas present. I was thrilled. I've been using an iPhone 11 for years, which Lucas and Carla bought for me, but this new phone was something I'd been hoping for. It was exactly what I wanted, and I couldn't wait to start using it. My old phone wasn't terrible, but Lucas and Carla had set it up with all kinds of restrictions, some of them seriously annoying. For example, they set up parental controls that I couldn't bypass. I couldn't download any apps without them approving it first. I couldn't turn off Share My Location, and they had full access to my passcode. At night, my phone would lock itself down, blocking everything except their contacts, starting at 8 p.m. and not unlocking until after school the next day. They even limited my YouTube time to 30 minutes a day, during the hours when my phone was unlocked. The list of approved websites was another pain. They had to manually add sites to a list of acceptable places for me to visit. If it wasn't on that list, I couldn't access it. Every time I tried asking them to loosen up some of these rules, they would say the same thing. We bought the phone, so these are the rules. It drove me crazy, but I always had to deal with it because that's what they told me. They kept saying they were just trying to keep me safe, but I never understood why they needed to control every little thing about my phone. Now this week, my dad sends me this brand new iPhone, and I was beyond excited. But the moment I opened it, Lucas and Carla laid down the law. They said that if I wanted to keep the new phone, I had to let them put the same restrictions on it as they did with the old one. I told them straight away that I didn't want any restrictions on this phone. I told them that my dad bought it for me, so he should be the one to decide the rules. My dad didn't want me to have those limitations on my phone. It's his gift to me, and I should be allowed to use it the way he intended. But now Lucas and Carla are telling me something completely different. They've completely changed their argument. They say that it doesn't matter who bought the phone. Since I'm living with them, I have to follow their rules. And apparently, the rule in this house is that all phones have restrictions, no exceptions. I couldn't believe it. They didn't buy the phone, so how can they impose their rules on it? It doesn't make sense to me. I don't think it's fair. If my dad paid for this phone, then why can't I use it the way he intended? And then, to make things worse, before I even got home from school on Monday, Lucas and Carla took the phone out of the box and set up all the restrictions. I was shocked. It's like they didn't even care what I had to say about it. Now, I'm left with a phone that I can't fully use, and I'm really upset about it. I'm trying to figure out what to do next. Part of me is thinking about going to my social worker and complaining because I just don't think it's right that they're doing this, especially since they didn't pay for the phone. It feels like they're overstepping, and I don't know what to do about it. Have I completely lost my mind here? Should I just deal with it? Or do I have a right to stand up for myself in this situation?